And so we stopped there. And they said, you actually can't cross the bridge. And we said, well, why not? And they said, oh, the bridge is closed now. And we're seeing all these other cars crossing. I said, it's not closed. And they said, well, you can't cross. And they said, well, we said, well, we're going to cross. We came here to cross. We're going to stay here. And so at that point, they detained us. So they surrounded us with police and held us. And we held our ground. They wanted us to leave, and we said, we're not going to leave. And we stayed there for 12 hours, actually. We got there at night, and were there through the night. And there were all these negotiations, and there were a couple of points at which the police actually tried to take our buses, in which we got out of the buses and had a protest there on the Suez Canal. I imagine it was one of, if not the only protest in the history of, on the Suez Canal, and the police had never seen anything like it before. And at one point, we were woken up in the middle of the night. They said, here, they're trying to take the buses, and so we surrounded the buses so that they couldn't take them. In my bus, we actually took the keys out of the ignition and hid them from the drivers and so on. But eventually, we decided that the best thing to do would be to go back to Cairo, wait for the rest of the group, regroup, and then go back as a stronger contingent. So that gives you just some sense of what the Egyptian government was doing to sort of undermine the whole effort. And really, they were trying to wait us out. They knew that we couldn't stay in Cairo forever. And so while they didn't arrest us or anything sort of active in that way to prevent us from crossing, they just tried to wait us out and prevent us from crossing. And the hope was that we would leave. What they told us, ultimately, the excuse that they used in terms of why we couldn't cross the bridge, was that we needed a certain document from the U.S. Embassy, an affidavit saying that we had read a statement from the State Department regarding the dangers of traveling to Palestine, that we had it signed and officiated by the U.S. Embassy, and then if we had that document in our possession, we could cross. So we went to Cairo and got this document, and I should have brought it with me, actually. But maybe some of you have seen these travel advisories that the State Department puts on a webpage. If you want to go to Mexico and you read what they say be careful about swine flu or whatever. Well, in terms of there's one regarding the occupied Palestinian territories. And so you read this statement that's a few pages, and essentially what it says is that Palestinians are terrorists. This is a dangerous place. And the most important thing is that the U.S. government discourages you from going. And if you choose to go, the U.S. Embassy has no obligation to help you if you're in need. And you have to sign that recognizing that they're not going to help us. One thing that's interesting is that they say explicitly in the statement, this applies to aid workers and journalists. So the U.S. government is actively discouraging, preventing journalists from going in and reporting the truth about what's happening in Gaza and the West Bank. Let me say another word about the convoy itself. One thing that I didn't realize was that it seemed that at least half of the convoy was actually Palestinians who were living in the United States. Some of whom were older folks who had spent much of their lives in Palestine and had a lifetime of memories in Palestine. Some of whom were people my age and younger who had actually never been to Palestine, or those who had been to Palestine hadn't been to Gaza. And then there were 7 people on the convoy who were actually Gazan Palestinians who were on this trip to go home. But for all these Palestinians, really, this was about them going home. That was one of the aspects of the trip. So in my mind, the convoy took on a new significance. Breaking the siege was about bringing in this aid and showing our solidarity as people from the United States, but it was also about bringing in Palestinians to go home, because just as much part of the siege as keeping medicine and food out is keeping Palestinians out and keeping Palestinians locked in as well. So that became a part of breaking the siege too. Okay, we were stuck in Egypt negotiating for about a week and a half, and I won't say too much about that experience, but suffice it to say that it was really frustrating for those of us who had come to go to Gaza, and we were kind of stuck in this hotel for a week and a half, negotiating with the Egyptian government and so on. The people leading the negotiations were George Galloway and also a New York City councilman named Charles Barron, a former Black Panther who's very much in solidarity with the Palestinians. And then joining us later in the trip was former Congresswoman Cynthia McKinney, who had just been arrested, actually, on one of the boats that Stan spoke about that was trying to break the siege via the sea, had been arrested, put in Israeli prison, sent back to New York, and then flew back to Cairo to join us in breaking the siege of Gaza. And so all these people were negotiating with the Egyptian government. At midnight, I got this call from one of the organizers saying, get your stuff, be ready in the hotel lobby by 3 in the morning, we're going to Gaza. And the Egyptian government had decided to let us in on 2 conditions. The first was that we leave all the trucks behind. So to this day, there are 47 brand new trucks languishing in a parking lot in Egypt, while people need them desperately in Gaza. The second condition was that we have 24 hours. Our plan the whole time was to spend 3 days in Gaza, but they said that we only had 24 hours. So true to the metaphor of Gaza being the world's largest open-air prison, this prison had visiting hours. And it has to be said again that if Gaza is a prison, the Egyptians hold a set of the keys, that they're really playing an active role in the siege. So that said, the next day we got in the lobby and we loaded up the stuff and headed out in the morning, again to Rafah. And this time we crossed the Peace Bridge and we made it to Rafah. There was this experience in sort of crossing from the Egyptian side to the border itself. There are 3 gates, one of which is sort of on the Egyptian side, and you can cross into that. And then there's sort of a border station. And then they'll let you on the other side of that. And then there's another gate that's actually at Palestine, and that's where they'll let you in. When we got to the first gate, we saw these people waiting there. As the buses were approaching, we saw a bunch of people. And as we got closer, we saw that a bunch of them had Palestinian flags. I said, oh, wow, they're waiting for us. We got closer and we saw that one of them had a banner that said Viva Palestina. We thought, wow, these people are waiting for us. You know, they're here to celebrate the convoy. And that was half true. They were waiting for us. But then it became painfully clear why they were waiting for us. They were Palestinians who had been waiting on the border, had been kept out. They were hoping to get in with us. And before we left Cairo, one of the organizers said, you know, when we get to the border, there may be a few Palestinians who want to cross with us. And unfortunately, we can't take them because the Egyptians won't let them in. They won't let us in with them, and it'll compromise the whole mission. So we were anticipating a few Palestinians waiting at the border, but there were dozens. And they were all kinds of people, old men, young women, children, infants, waiting in the desert sun. We found out that one family had been waiting for 17 days. And as our buses got closer, we saw some of them even held up U.S. passports. Some of these were U.S. citizens. And they were hoping to get in on the same basis that we were getting in, that we were U.S. citizens. There were also a couple of people from Code Pink, some activists who were there, and that organization is doing incredible work to break the siege as well. So when our buses got to the gate, they were hoping to get in, and our buses were trying to drive through. And at one point, the Code Pink activists and a bunch of the Palestinians actually got in front of the buses, hoping to, again, get in with us. And what we witnessed was, of all the things that we saw on the trip, the thing that haunts me the most, which was a phalanx of riot police march out. Egyptian riot police come out with these long clubs and physically push this crowd of women holding their infants out of the way so their buses could go through. So again, the role of the Egyptian government as the jailer, deciding who gets to come in and who gets to, or who has to stay out, rather. So after that, we got into this sort of waiting area, and we were there early enough so that we could spend the day in Gaza. But once you get inside, you have to buy a visa and then hand your passport to Egyptian officials for processing.